Hello. I thought I would say a few words about some of the difficult situations I encountered during my life on the ice. I was never deterred and do not regret 1 minute of it. Well, I started, so I shall continue. Summer 1973, on a Wednesday night, I met a friend from the old skating days of my teens, Chris Fairfield, in the Streatham Ice Rink skate shop, where I was buying some skate laces. I'd stopped skating in 1962 when I'd already had 2 kids, and another 3 kids later I decided to go back to the ice. I stopped again to have another child, my 6th, and as soon as I could, I determined to get back on the ice wearing my old ice hockey skates, but I needed new laces. Chris told me he was still speed skating, and he invited me to watch a speed club training that night. I saw 2 women, Dawn Streeter and Christine Boardman, who I learned afterwards were sister to speed skater Colin Boardman afterwards. She was very good. Dawn looked very skilled too on the strange blades. Chris asked if I would like to try. I borrowed skates, and once again I clung onto the barrier as I had when I was 8 years old, but this time I was 32, and I'd just had my 6th child in the March. I decided to go every Wednesday, and after 4 weeks I was asked if I'd like to go to Belgium with the club and race for it. Well, I had literally only just found my edges. I asked why me. They said Christine wouldn't go to get beaten. I went and got beaten, but made friends for life that weekend. Must mention John Blewett, now passed sadly this year, who as a judge skated alongside me inside the track on the last lap of the 1500 metres, shouting encouragement. He encouraged me even until now, I wrote this a couple of years ago. When I came back, I asked to join the club. No female had ever been a member. I was allowed to join as a junior, under 16 boys, as I would not have a vote and could therefore not get to sit on the committee. I continued to train every week, and I used to race against club members. We went to matches around the country. Christine left the club and Dawn stopped coming to Streatham too. I saw no other woman skating, although Vicky Friend, who raced outdoors and I met sometimes at Richmond, still skated occasionally, and Pat Tipper, also an Olympic outdoor skater, had retired. I recall Malcolm Conway's sister Ros was a good skater, and I do remember having a race with her one time. By 1975, I'd been allowed to pay a full sub and be on the committee, as Alex Ramsey, our club secretary, asked for me to be his assistant. Kay Dibbling, now Perkins, asked to join us in June, and it was left to me to help her, so I became a coach. I didn't realise that was what was happening. She got speed skates in the August. It was hard to get smaller sizes then. Me and Kay raced each other and the men. That year, 1975, I decided that we needed other women to take up the sport. We couldn't just keep racing each other. And when I went to Belgium, there were as many girls as boys on the ice in speed skates. It was like heaven. The judges, however, were all men. I raced for Streatham in Bruges at an international club meet, and there I raced against the Dutch and Belgian champions. They were so amazed and shocked that there were no other females racing indoors, and that I did not train in a gym. When I came back, I resolved to change all that. I made a nuisance of myself at every race meet up and down the country, telling the clubs, their secretaries, to get women and girls to take up the sport and join their clubs. The first women to let us know that they existed were Nottingham's Mandy Horspool, now Worth, a figure skater of some standing, and Kim Ferran, whose brother was a speed skater at Birmingham. They came to Streatham, and the first ever race took place there. Kay won, Mandy 2nd, me 3rd, and Kim 4th. I told Kim that she would soon beat me, and she proved me right. Early 1976, I became a full member of the club and was on the committee as secretary. Alex had dropped all the club papers off at my work one day. He was retiring, and I then became club rep for Streatham on the then NSA, now British Ice Skating's Ice Speed Committee. John Blewett, who sadly passed this year, was secretary of Richmond Aldwych and the Ice Speed Committee, and he was my friend. He remained my friend. Aldwich's Joe Sampson also extended the hand of friendship. He's now passed. He passed as my friend. In fact, it was we were both on the ice together at Richmond officiating, and he said to me, "Take my clipboard, Lynn, I've got to get off the ice. That's it, I'm finished." And that was the last time he ever got on, because he was suffering from arthritis too. I used my position on the Ice Speed Committee meetings to push the participation and recognition of women in my sport. I contributed generally in all other areas, of course. Now, in 1977, unable to take part in competition anymore because I'd been beaten up by my estranged husband and my left leg and neck was badly damaged, plus other injuries. I was sewn up and patched up and walking with a stick for ages. And I couldn't get back to the level I was at. That's fitness studies. And of course, the older you are, the more hard it is to get back to fitness. I decided to apply to the Ice Speed Committee to be a judge. The system was B class. Then after a year or two, you could then be made up to an A class judge and then a referee. And this, of course, was for the men. I waited outside the committee room, just like when I first wanted to join the speed club, and Joe Sampson was the first to come out and shake my hand and ushered me in, and there I was, a B-class judge of indoor racing, the first woman ever in England. It took me years to get my A-class accreditation, about 2 or 3 times the number of years the men had to wait to qualify. They also brought in a system of marking by the centre ice chief referee. John Blewett told me that every time Roy Wellham, now he's just passed as well, bless him, was officiating as referee with me on the ice, I got 0. Meanwhile, they decided at another meeting I was at to make everyone wear a blue shirt and blazer from the men's department and M&S, they said, and grey flannels and a tie. When I said I'd get a blouse, someone said mine would be a shirt done up on the wrong side. I bought a Chanel blazer and a bow tie and a shirt. When I was on the ice to officiate for the first time at Nottingham, the chair of the club, also an official, said, "Get that woman off the ice." He was told they couldn't because I was a B-class judge. And I was told by Kay that when she was on the start line with other women, also in Nottingham, that they were told to stop their cackling. The first league match I officiated at in Southampton, as I got on the ice and joined the inspection with the other officials, one of them said loudly, "This is a man's sport." I also heard that if women speed skated, the men would all end up wearing pink. No comment on that one. I suggested to the Ice Speed Committee that gloves would be a good safety feature after a skater had a tendon injury to his hand caused by a skate. They laughed. Now, of course, they kit up. Helmets came in as compulsory in 1984. In 1978, I organised an international at Streatham after the first Premier World Championships at Solihull, and it was a wonderful event. Japan, Australia and a London combined club, aka Streatham and Richmond Aldwych. And by the way, the World Championships, including women since 1981, but in 1976 to 80, they were held under different names, now receive status as ISU World Championships. Japan, then newcomers to short track indoor speed skating, sent 5 women skaters, and we had Kay. I handwrote the programme, and an incensed person at the Ice Speed Committee demanded to know what right I had to plan the event and the programme. This happened again after another event when I had to quickly accommodate a change of officials and format. There was no problem with any events I organised. I was an official starter by then, later to be an international starter who never started another international, but did officiate at many Streatham inter-club meets. I was only asked to do a few, mostly as assistant starter at other rinks. I pointed out to the Ice Speed Committee that to attract women to the sport we had to offer a championship, something to strive for. They said eventually they would consider that if I could find 16 women of a standard to compete. At the time there were about 6. So I recruited at Streatham, and by 1978 there were quite a few speed skaters, a far cry from when Kay was literally sent to Coventry. Hardly any of the boys or men spoke to her. When she entered races against the men at Richmond, she won aftershave. Later she won talcum powder, and when I officiated at a match, I was told they only had cigars for the officials. Maybe they should have got a box of chocolates too. I said, no, it's all right. By 1980, there was a real squad of women skaters at Streatham, and we, the men and women, decided to go to an inter-club event with lots of women's races in Bruges, rather than attend a domestic race meeting where there wouldn't be the opportunity. We all got suspended for the rest of the season, including me, and I'm the only official to have ever been suspended as far as I know. One of the British Championships in Solihull, the BBC Women's Hour broadcaster Eddie Boccio, who was also a friend in journalism, was there, and he was there recording for the radio, and he asked Ken Pendry, chair of the Ice Speed Committee and the chief referee, why, if there were women racing, no women officials were on the ice, and Ken replied, none qualified. I'd been told I was the ladies' competitor steward, e.g. in charge of the heat box, seeing girls getting on and off the ice, but I was an A-class referee. Eddie said, what about Lyn Guest, my name then? And Ken said, apart from her. 1984, at the Worlds in Peterborough, I was asked to sit on the stage as a possible time taker when I was given medal ribbons to untangle. The first day I was on the ice for hours, then the TV turned up and I was told to take a break. I did say I was okay to carry on, but no. Also in 1984, the name of the sport changed from indoor to short track. By this time I was chair of the Streatham Ice Speed Club and coaching. Also at Peterborough in 1984, Dave Cox, another international starter, had been on the ice for hours and asked Ken Pendry to let him swap duties with me to give him a break. Dave told me that Ken said he did not want me on the ice. I sat on the stage with the timekeepers the next day, and a box of medals and ribbons was plonked in front of me and a couple of other women near me, with the instruction to sort those out, ladies. There was an American female judge on the ice. There was a meeting to decide who would be selected to go to the next big competition. I think it was Canada, and who would go as manager. I assumed, and so did some of my own skating friends and colleagues, that I could be appointed women's team manager, instead of which a chaperone was appointed, the non-speed skating wife of the men's team manager, and it turned out that GB was the one women's team without a women's team manager. We held an inter-club reciprocal meet with the Bruges Club, where I'd first raced in 1973. About 3 years later, Staff Verbist, head of the Dutch short track KNSB, said he thought they should make a statute for me. I said, oh, they have. It's a Sex Equality Bill, 1975. He said, no, I mean a statue. I said, oh, only to throw things at, I would think. In the winter of 1975-76, I raced outdoors on the Fens, and I'll never forget the kindness and encouragement I received from the Fens Centre and skaters. I drew in the first ever legally mixed draw a time trial against Paul French, then manager of Peterborough Ice Rink. He treated me as an equal, as a skater, as did all those Fens skaters, and when he won the toss, he took the inside lane. After I refereed the European Youth Championships in Bruges in 1983, I asked for an international referee's badge for my blazer. I was told it was only kids, so it doesn't count. When the Belgians and Dutch heard, Staff said he would like to come over and give some officials, I will not name them, he did, a black eye. I was asked to write a book on women in sport for Thorstons in 1988, now an imprint of HarperCollins. I was publishing editor of Sportswoman, and I was not invited to the book launch. Excuse the publisher's PR gave me, it was only one book in the series they were launching. The thread that wove the book together was my own sport of speed skating and later ice hockey, another game I helped facilitate for women here in the UK back in 1981. Neither the NISA or ISU bothered to promote the book, titled Women and Sport, that was published by Thorstons. However, not only did it sell out, it's still in college libraries and public libraries and doing the second-hand rounds on eBay and so on. I've been told that many have used it for their sports degrees and diplomas. I also wrote about speed skating from 1984 onward in the national press. And of course, any women's competitions, although media coverage has always been dire in the UK, both for speed skating and women's participation in this or any other sport, full stop. It's getting a little better. I also wrote about ice hockey, including women's ice hockey. Fast forward then to 1990, and I introduced new training techniques for my skaters at Alexandra Palace. At this time, I also played ice hockey there, having relocated from Streatham, where I'd helped found and played for the women's club. The New Zealand relay team came over to join their countryman Matthew Biggs, who had been doing phenomenally well under my training regime, and when some skaters from the Aldrich Club walked in, all skaters were always welcome to training sessions, they laughed and then asked the Kiwis why they were training with me. They went back and won the Relay World Championships in Australia. I joined the National Association of Sports Coaches and was invited to coach in South Africa after apartheid, and when I came back visited a training session and at the Aldrich, where I felt less than welcome. Not a new sensation. When I started training there back in 75, at Richmond that was at the time, they're now at Guildford, I was not allowed on the ice unless I had a female chaperone. My 16-year-old eldest daughter was roped in. I couldn't change in the changing room either, even though it was just putting my skates on and off. I attended a training camp in Nottingham Water Sports Centre and was given the very young kiddies. Wilf O'Reilly, now extremely elevated coach in the Netherlands, asked the organisers for me to take the senior men for an afternoon. This I happily undertook. I should tell you also, in case you don't know, of course, he was many times gold medalist and champion, both British and international. He apologised afterwards for their attitude. Oh, and I did take a part in training him as well at Solihull, the old training sessions we had there. It was brilliant. Anyway, so that is just a glimpse into some of the more unpleasant experiences I've had in my skating life. But as Kathy said to me, if you don't talk about it now, who's going to know? But the good experience of the ice and skating far, far outweighs any bad. I mentioned about South Africa. In 1991, my oldest son Simon contacted the South African Embassy in London and told them about me. We had links on my grandmother de Swart's side with cultural and sports attaché, and before I knew it, Kathy and I were flying out to South Africa to meet with the South African Speed Skating Association to coach their speed skaters based in Johannesburg, and met up with Sam Ramsamy, the head of the South African Olympic Committee post-apartheid. While there, I kept a coach's diary with info on training, diet, equipment and more that was duplicated and bound by top skater Cindy Mayer, and Cindy, unfortunately, sadly, is no longer with us either, that I left with them. The elite squad also came and trained with me in England before going to the World Championships in Denver in April 1992. They acquitted themselves very well, although Cindy smashed into the barrier when in contention for the 500 metres and retired injured for the duration. She went on to represent her country in the Olympics, and Paul Shoebridge went on to coach at top level himself. The ice has been my life, has saved my life on more than one occasion, more of that in my memoirs that I'm currently writing up. And though sometimes it has been a struggle, and now I can no longer skate on it, it is still close to my heart, and so are the friends I've made through it. Now, I've been busy relaunching the historic sport of bandy here in the UK since I discovered it in 2016, and I'm also looking to find the money or partner for an ice stadium here on the Fens where I now live to build a 400-metre long track, aka outdoor track, plus a 100 by 60 metre bandy ice field inside it. I came to the Fens because I wrote to the Ice Speed Committee when I became disabled to ask permission to continue officiating at matches in a wheelchair. They did not reply, and I was told later by the secretary that it was read out by the secretary and basically thrown away. I knew I would still be welcome here on the Fens, and I was, and I still am. I've been on the ice in my chair too, both outdoors at Welney and Whittlesea, and in at the ice rink in Peterborough. I also had a last skate in my wheelchair wearing skates, pushed by my son Simon at the closing down event at Streatham Ice Rink in 2011, where my skating journey began about 65 years earlier. I hope that you've enjoyed this little précis of some of the experiences I've had, and I'm sorry that I regaled you with some of the negative ones, but then, as Kathy said, I echo her words again, that if I don't say now, who will know? And of course I did not want to bring my sport into disrepute, so I never challenged anything publicly. I just carried on skating, doing what I did, trying to help everybody that I could, and to enjoy the ice and the sport that I loved and that I still love. And I hope that you've enjoyed this little chat. And if there are any questions about it, you can always, Facebook me or something. I'm on Facebook, Lyn Gibb-de, and I welcome any messages. And I hope that my memoirs prove interesting to you, and I hope that you've enjoyed our little chat. Good skating.